Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a gathering place. And you know what it is. You know what's happening. Every third Sunday, it's Politics Talk, and we have a special guest with us. But before we bring him on, you know what's going to happen, our opening. So I'll see you in just a moment because we are ready to get into some serious conversation here today. We'll see you in a moment.
Hello, I'm Marilyn Hemingway, and welcome to A Gathering Place. I said, I'm stepping back because we have young voices who want to be heard and they're moving on something.
Branding is really important to you and your business.
Even a basic type of technology, you learn it all.
And people are
Good question.
Well, we're back, folks, and we'll just go ahead and get started. You know what you need to do. Drop your questions and comments in the comment section because we are here ready to get started. Let's bring on our usual co-host. We'll start with Jamarr Brown, all the way from Texas, the independent republic of Texas.
Hey, Marilyn.
Hey, Jamarr, how are you?
Happy MLK weekend. I guess
I know, right? We're going to talk about that, too. We're going to talk about that too. And it's, it's important to talk about. And let's bring on our co-host, Brandon Upson. Hey, Brandon.
Hey, y'all. How y'all doing today?
Doing good. Thank you. We were just behind the scenes, y'all, laughing because Brandon and Jamarr obviously got the message that I did not get with Black Power with the shirts, as Jamarr said, Black Power today. But
they always say Brandon and I look alike anyway.
I know.
I'm ready for the occasion.
All right. Well, we got a special guest today. We got a lot to talk about. Let's bring on Pastor Thomas Dixon. Pastor Dixon is a former United States senatorial candidate, and he is a community advocate across the entire state of South Carolina, based in Charleston. But if you need support, advocacy, this is the man to call. He will be there. He's done it for me and others, and always good to see you, Pastor Dixon. And thanks for coming on.
No, one thing, it's good to be seen. This year around that 70-year-old mark, and it's just good to be seen. But I appreciate it. Thank you so much for inviting me on and to be a part of this esteemed group here. I don't know what I did to be blessed like this here. Come on, somebody.
Well, I've been meaning to bring you on as a guest for a while now. So it was time then. It was time. So I'm delighted to have you here. So our topics we want to talk about today, we put out there is the insurrection, Republicans stopping investigations, and the local impact, Cinema Mansion, the filibuster vote and voting rights. And of course, tomorrow is the official federal recognition of Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. So that's a federal holiday tomorrow. And it is so impactful. The legacy of King is so impactful. But I just want to say this really quickly. His legacy is impactful, but it's very one-dimensional. We don't get the radical King, and we need to start talking more about the radical King because of everything that's happening with the filibuster, voting rights, and the insurrection. Jamarr, you dropped us a note earlier. You wanted to talk about what's going on with the Republicans and the impact on a local level with that insurrection. Why don't you get us rolling today with our politics talk?
Oh, Lord. Well, hi, everybody out there. We're going to go ahead and get started. You will jump to me first. But so anyway, I think everybody here and who's watching knows that we had the first, I don't want to call it anniversary, but the first recognition a year from the insurrection that we experienced at the U.S. Capitol, which, we have to continually remind people is the seat of federal government. But, for me, one of the things I think that's very important, and I've been talking to press and reporters and other folks about it, and I'm sure everyone across various communities are having different conversations. I think the thing that we have to realize is, number one, we have to get to the bottom of what happened. We have to get to the bottom of what happened and ensure that as we get to the bottom, that the people are held accountable for their actions. We know that if the people who rammed the Capitol on January 6, 2021 look like probably some of us on this screen, there might be a different result and there'd be a different conversation that's happening. We saw that, last week, one of the leaders was charged with almost near treason, which it actually should be treason, but we'll get to that later, as well. But the thing that I think that's important for people to recognize is, one, we have an election this year, and there are many people who are serving in our governing bodies, whether it's a school board or a state legislature or even the U.S. Congress itself, who were involved in inciting that. And so there needs to be political, but also criminal responsibility and accountability that needs to happen. And that work still happens now. We've seen that, particularly white conservative legislators and other folks that are inciting have ducked and dodged subpoenas. They've tried to escape the process every step of the way. And so I think that we have to make sure that we are holding those folks accountable. There are primary elections. There's the general election this fall. And we have a real opportunity with that and among other things to really be able to take action this year, because no way can you govern the same government that you tried to overthrow. And that can't be the case. And we're seeing that now. And then last thing I'll say is, one of the things I think that's dangerous about what happened without accountability is we're seeing that on our school boards, where they're sending kids to school without testing and without masking. They're trying to push this critical race theory, changing history and whitewashing history. You go to the legislature where, in Texas at least, they passed permitless carry. We just had a whole situation yesterday in a place of worship in North Texas. They passed these voter suppression laws. They passed bans to access to abortion and healthcare. And so when you look at January 6th, it didn't end on January 6th. It's showing up in our states and in our communities, and the people have to be accountable so that we can take back those offices in a way to ensure that we move policy forward that represents us. So I think that that's the thing that we have to start looking at as it relates to the January 6th insurrection.
Brandon, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think that we need to boil this thing down and, like the old folks say, put it where the goats can get it, right? And when we talk about insurrection, I had to Google at the beginning a year ago when the breach on the Capitol happened and folks was talking about insurrection. I had to Google what in the world is insurrection, right? But if they would have said this is an act of treason, then I would have understood that. Mm-hmm. And we got to make sure that we're speaking in terms and in language that our voters, everyday people, understand. So I just want to put it out here because there's more to the act of treason that is that equates to the actions that we saw on January 6th than even insurrection. So the definition, I got it right here in my hand, of treason is a crime of attacking a state authority to which one owes allegiance to. This typically includes acts such as participating in a war against one's native country or attempting to overthrow the government. Now, if that isn't exactly what happened at January 6th, it was an act of war against our own country. It was an attempt to overthrow our government and stop the democratic process. It was an act of coordinated attacks and inside information and intelligence used in the act of trying to overthrow our democracy. And every person that was there that breached the line to get inside of our United States Capitol should not be charged with trespassing. They should be charged with treason. And there is no question or doubt about it. And if, we see more of this, it's just the act of, when we saw Kyle Rittenhouse crying on the stands, the judge and the jury saw a young man, a little boy crying. But if that was a black man crying or a black child crying on the stand, they would have saw a criminal crying to try to get away with the crimes that they committed. We can't allow this unbalanced justice to be disseminated across our country, and especially during times like this.
That's so true, Brandon. And unfortunately, you are very accurate in saying if that was a young black boy, he more than likely would not have been alive after that night. They would have shot him on sight. Pastor Dixon, you wanted to come on and talk about Martin Luther King Jr., who held our government accountable, who held our society accountable, not only for how they governed, but their actions. What do you think he would be thinking right now if we were so fortunate to have him with us alive? What do you think he would be thinking right now? Because he held a lot of these folks accountable in his lifetime.
Yeah, I know he tried to hold them accountable. But unfortunately, what we see today is the lack of movement forward from his conversation and the legacy that he left to today. We've gone backward. The spirit that Dr. King brought to the table, a spirit of not only truth, but justice, honesty, integrity, and a fierceness that wouldn't allow anybody to, let me just flam him or to deter him. That's missing today in many respects, in many avenues. We're talking about this insurrection, sedition, treason. I like words like sedition and treason, because when we talk about those terms, we're talking about 20 years of imprisonment. We're talking about if there would have been Black people that did what was done on January 6th of 2021, then there would have been a lot of bodies in the Capitol that day. Let there be no doubt about it. But because of the language that has been used, and because we have those who are 20 years of imprisonment, we're talking about if there would have been Black people that did what was done on January 6th of 2020. If there would have been Black people that did what was done on January 6th of 2020. Are we good? Because I'm hearing myself back.
Yeah, go ahead. You're good.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought I had messed something up. Y'all know I'm technically challenged. Y'all know that now. So don't even go there. Okay. I was going to start pressing buttons and stuff. But yeah, the reality is that, our elected officials, those who represent like values and ideals that we support, the Democrats, instead of them coming hard, like in the spirit of a Dr. King, instead of them coming up front and saying, no, we're going to term this exactly the way it is. I don't want to see no trespassing charges or anything like that. We going hard. And the first people that you get in front of the court, we need to make sure that they get slammed. If they would have given the first 10 people that went before a judge 20 years, we wouldn't have a problem out in the streets with white supremacy at that level right now, seditionists at that level right now, people who are still plotting insurrections, trying to take over, just as was said, school boards, county councils, and city councils. Why? Because they realize ain't nobody playing with them. And I think that that we've kind of lost that fire and that flame somewhere along the way, and we have to recapture it so that our opposition is nothing more than white supremacy, white privilege, and a lineup of other terminology. That opposition needs to know that we're not going to have it. We're not going to take it. We're not going to allow this to flourish anymore. And we're going to call it out and address it at any level. And anybody, no matter what political party they're with, no matter whom they support, we're going to stand up for truth and justice, freedom, against racism, no matter where it happens at. CRT, we need to move it forward. There's so many different areas that we need to be moving forward at.
So I was in a meeting this week, and it was regarding redistricting on the county level. And I told an elected official who happened to be a Black male Democrat that I don't elect people to go and accommodate. I elect people to go fight for me. And I think part of our problem is taking a little bit of what all three of you said, but in particular, Jamarr noting they are actively plotting to take over school boards on the local level. Because one, there's a lot of money flowing around because Biden has passed the American Rescue Plan. He passed an infrastructure plan. They know that there's a lot of money coming down now, and they want to take ownership of that and say, hey, look what we're doing for y'all, even though all of them voted against it. Okay, and I'm calling out Republicans on
That's right.
that. Also, I think in a lot of ways we have within which Republican or Democratic Party, we have been too accommodating of those who, quite frankly, no longer respect the Constitution. And they have been that way for years. It has just become radicalized to the point that we've almost normalized it. And that's very dangerous. I think our democracy is very much in trouble. And it's one thing to love your country so much that you want it to be better. It's another that you hate a group of people so much that you're willing to take your government down just to keep them out of power. And I think that's what's happening now. And quite frankly, if a Joe Manchin cinema are not willing to see that they've been bought out so much that they're willing to see this democracy be compromised, then we need to go all out. I understand about rules and following the Constitution, but within the Constitution, they gave us means to hold this country together. And I think we already had a battle of war about this already. And one more thing I want to say, and I know y'all ready to jump in, is that insurrection, that act of treason did not end on January 6th. It has continued by the fact that they're organized to take over the school boards and the local governments. They're not taking them over because they want better government or they want improvement. They're taking them over to stop a whole group of people from gaining control because they see the writing on the wall that the Black and brown folks are going to be just in sheer numbers. They're going to outnumber white folks. And it's happening faster than they planned on it, that they realize. And they're operating out of anger, hatred, and fear. And those are dangerous combinations. So the question becomes, how do we organize? How do we come to our people and we make it plain, as Jamarr said and April Garner put it, we got to make it plain to people. We got to make it plain to people so that they get knowledge and are energized to get engaged and fight back against this. I know, Jamarr, you ready? I see you. Go ahead and say something.
Somebody was messaging me.
Okay.
I'm going to be short because I'm from Brandon. But I think that, it's important what you're saying is, we have to make sure that we continually make things plain. And I think in our last conversation when we were live in Charleston, we talked about messaging. And one of the things I think that we don't talk about is messaging in a way that basically tells the truth as for what the truth is. In Texas, for example, when you say just the numbers, 95% of the population growth over the past decade have been people of color. 95%, like that number can't lie, right? And that's even with a flawed census process under the defeated former president. And so it still reflected that. But when you look at where the power is, and Dr. King talks about this, right? That we love, this weekend talking about love and driving out hate and that, and we should be doing that. But Dr. King also taught us that we won't really move forward as a society. We won't move forward as a government until we begin to shift economic and political power. Yeah. And what we saw was in Texas anyway, and I'm sure we're seeing it in other states, is 95% of the population growth was people of color, not maybe one or two new seats out of 150 seats in the House in terms of representing those communities, and where those communities would have an opportunity to come together and elect a candidate of their choice and a candidate of interest that could therefore represent them, like you're saying, Marilyn. And so I think that the thing that we have to be thinking about is, how are we messaging? How are we making it plain? But also we've got to make sure that we stand strong as, our folks at Black Voters Matter and other folks tell us, we cannot out-organize voter suppression. They've been telling Black people to out-organize things since we got here, right? You're supposed to out-organize slavery. We were supposed to out-organize Jim Crow. Now we're supposed to out-organize voter suppression, and we're supposed to out-organize CRT. And it's not just about how we organize. It's about how we show up in the system and what that means in the system. It's not enough for us to just organize. We've got to run for office, and we've got to be able to support people who are running for office. We've got to still be showing up at those meetings when they are trying to dismantle government. because what they're doing at the school board and the water board and the city council is they literally are dismantling democracy from the very bottom and working their way up to the top. And that's what we're seeing, you know, across the country. And so I think that we've got to be able to make sure that we tell people that and we do that. We also have to make sure that we are not messaging and telling people to vote in reaction. Over multiple centuries, we have been taught to react to things, and we have not, and I say organized for lack of better words right now, but we have not organized ourselves in a way to where we are proactively offering something forward. Because to be completely honest, if we have the numbers, as you're saying, Marilyn, if you have the sheer numbers, then we need to use those numbers. And how are we holding current electeds accountable, but also how are we offering a new vision? How are we offering new ideas and new policy proposals through proactively moving within the system that exists? And so I think that those are the things that are important, but sometimes you have to get in the system to change it. But the problem is, and I'll just say this, I'm gonna say it. And the problem is we have a lot of people who get in the system and they acclimate to said same system. And then changes don't happen and don't occur, because we just had this case in Texas where a group of Black Political Action Committee did not endorse a Black candidate. And then it was a whole conundrum about why that organization didn't endorse that candidate. Well, it's not just about you being Black. It's about what are you going to do for yourself and for your community, other than just what your skin tone looks like. And so those are the conversations and those are the tactics and the steps that I think we have to start making, and being accountable to ourselves as we make those steps.
Brandon, you are part of Amplify Action. You are chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party Black Caucus. So you are outside and inside the party system. And, you know, what do you think about what Jamarr just said, especially holding our elected officials who look like us accountable? Because Jamarr is right. I'm just going to say it. A lot of them get elected and then they get corrupted by the system that they were sent in to fight for.
Right. And Jamarr is absolutely right. And Marilyn, you said I'm on the outside and the inside, and then I'm on the inside again because I'm also the chief strategy officer for the House Caucus.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
In the State House. And, and I see a lot of what we've been talking about over this last 3 minutes during session, in our meetings on the State House floor. And it brought me to these 2 points I wanted to share. One, we have to realize that we can't focus on just fighting these little battles when they've been waging war since 1865, right? They've been actively engaged in war. And when I say they, I mean those who seek to oppress a certain group for their own benefit, to create a lower class that is subservient to a small minority, right? In some places, we may call that, it just slipped out of my mind, and South Africa, apartheid.
Apartheid.
An apartheid form of government, right? So, you know, I'm going to slightly contradict something that Jamarr said, because I think in bringing that solution, first, we have to do 3 things. We got to organize, we got to donate, and we got to raise hell. And when I talk about organizing, the folks, and I'm talking about elected officials, they respect the vote that they have to earn. I got to say that because we can't just give our vote away. We have to make sure that folks understand that you're going to have to earn my vote. And then if you don't do what you said you were going to do once you get in office, you're going to lose my vote, and we're going to give it to someone else who will then come in and replace you. I believe that these elected officials having to earn our vote will keep them honest and give them a backbone when they go up into that place that they're serving, whether that's city council or the state house or the United States Senate, right? That second thing is we have to become donors. We have to become folks, even if we only have a little bit, we got to organize our money. We got to bundle our money together and move it as a block, because they fear organized money. And this is where Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin comes into play, right? Mm-hmm. They fear the organized money that put them into office because it can take them out of office. And that goes city council, state house, United States Congress, right? So as a community, as a group of people of all shades who want to fight back against this just horrid practices of legislation and treason, we have to organize our money. And the last thing is we got to continue to raise hell, because we're stronger when we work together. And we can't be, like Jamarr said, reactionary. We actually have to have a plan forward and move like a running river towards that goal, because once we get our momentum, nothing can stop us.
You know, one thing I say quite frequently, since you mentioned 1865, Brandon, is conservative white folks ain't like black folks ever since we stopped working for free. And we got to get that in our heads, you know, and that's one of those things we have to have an understanding of, because it informs a lot of stuff. That's one reason they don't like raising the minimum wage and everything. But, and also my other thing before I turn it over to Pastor Dixon is that part of organizing is also self-care. Y'all, we got to support our leaders who are out here doing the work. And sometimes that means going to those leaders and saying, y'all need to step back. Let me step up now. And you get some rest so you can come back and continue the work. That's part of organizing. That's part of, some of us need to be the self-care people. You know, some of us need to be on the front line. So if you think you don't have a role, we all have a role. It may not be on the front line. You may be the self-care person that takes someone's place for a little while so they can get some rest and come back. Pastor Dixon, I know you got a lot to say too. So go ahead and add that to it.
Yeah, but you know, our you know, the rest of the folks on the panel here have nailed, you know, all of this. But I would like to add a step prior to organizing and donating and raising hell. Prior to that, we have a problem with apathy, and it's not just within the Black community. It's among the Democratic community. We think that we have to coddle Republicans, and we have to meet people in the middle ground, and we have to, you know, reach across the aisle and everything. They never do that, because they run things. Okay, they're in charge, so they know they don't have to reach out. They can just draw hard lines and say, you either go with us or we're going to run over you. And instead of us understanding that, until we instill that spirit into the people who actually get out and vote, so we can flip some of these states, so we can flip Congress as a whole, then we're still going to run into these problems, because we've got this gray area that we as Democrats operate in. And we'll never get anywhere operating in that gray area. We need to move the gray area into a blue area, where whatever the red area tries to put up, we basically overpowered. I'm not even talking purple. I don't even want to hear that. I'm talking about what's good for the people, because I've watched the Republican Party consistently over the years do things that are contrary to the goodwill of the people. And I was getting ready to cuss, but I ain't gonna cuss. It ticks me off straight up, because when I talk to those who have the ability to have the platform to fight this fight and to push that message forward about we have to fight, we're in a fight for life out here, they step back from doing that. Oh, that's too harsh. That's not politically correct. I ain't trying to be politically correct, because people are out here dying. When it comes to healthcare, people are dying. When it comes to gun legislation, people are dying. When it comes for setting up our kids for the school to prison pipeline, they're dying and going into prison. Wages, unions, all of that. And by the way, this is Dr. King's holiday. And all of those things that I just mentioned were things that he championed. Mm-hmm. He said that healthcare is a human right, where the Republicans say, no, it's not a human right. We need to make sure that the insurance companies are making money so we can deprive people of universal health care. He said that everybody should be educated, receive the same quality public education. And the Republicans say, no, privatization is the way. He said that unions, as a matter of fact, he was fighting for a union in Memphis when he was murdered. Mm-hmm. And wages, getting away from slave wages. And he died because of gun violence. And here we got Republicans that tomorrow going to stand at somebody's parade some darn where, going to light a grill somewhere, when the reality is they don't stand for anything that Dr. King has said, anything that he represented, and they need to go on to work and shut up and dribble because it doesn't make sense. Why are they celebrating a holiday of a man that they don't celebrate, whose life and mission on this earth they do not believe in? They don't believe in liberty and justice for all. They don't believe it in the dream that Dr. King talked about. They don't believe in anything but what their agenda is, but they have us fooled as a collective in the thinking it's all right. It's all right to say one thing and do something else. It's all right to blame the violent takeover of the Capitol on Antifa and Black Lives Matter. It's okay, even though everybody you see there is white and they just left from a Trump rally. They've got us so caught up, and our Democratic leaders just say, okay, all right. Okay, but that day is coming to an end, and that day is coming to an end soon, because that education that I was saying before, the organizing, before the donating, and then the raising hell, we're going to get that education out, get people motivated, get them involved and engaged, so that when we start organizing, they're pumped up, fired up. We can get them so that they understand, just like the Republicans do. When you got your candidate, if your candidate represents what you believe in, drop the money. Don't let them. They don't have to beg for it. Stop begging for money. Give it. This is your life on the line. Give it to them. And once that happens, then we can really start raising some hell out here, because I'm about ready to raise some hell.
So what you're talking about, education, knowledge is key. And that's one of the reasons since the civil rights movements, the end of the 60s, that they've been undermining the public school system. And people need to understand that. And what you were just talking about, Pastor Dixon, one of the things that's happening, we get so caught up in the propaganda, we don't even realize that we too are spouting the propaganda. Let me give you an example, then y'all can roll with this too. You mentioned that Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. supported healthcare, education, and unions. And that's very true. But what are they attacking? We are the only developed country in the world that does not have universal health care. We are the only developed country in the world that college is not free. And they've got us so bamboozled with propaganda. People will argue with the fact, well, let's make associate degrees free. Hell, all of it needs to be free. Why are you settling? They got you so bamboozled. You are willing to settle for mediocrity. You know, and that's us being bamboozled and lack of knowledge. And they kill it. They kill the messenger every time, y'all. So if y'all gonna be out here fighting, so the pastor may not curse, but Marilyn gonna curse. So anyway, yeah, I know I curse, y'all. But anyway, I support unions. And you're right. People are now starting. This COVID woke people up in many ways. People don't realize there are unions on strike right now, even as we speak. There have been unions striking, y'all, for months now, and people are not paying attention to it because they're not reporting it on the news like it should be covered, because they want to keep us ignorant, because they want to keep us bamboozled so that we don't demand what we deserve: universal health care, free college. Y'all, college can be free. We need to cut our military budget. Let me go ahead and just say that. All right. Mm-hmm. But also I'm willing to pay my taxes so that we can provide universal health care, so we can provide free college education. Jamarr, go ahead. Go ahead, Jamarr.
Oh, you got me itching, child. Well, a couple things I wanted to add to what Pastor Dixon was saying. I think the one thing that we have to understand when he was saying about the other side doesn't reach across the aisle and all those things, he absolutely is right. And I think that what we have to teach our side of the aisle, for lack of better words, is we have to understand power and power dynamics. That at the end of the day, Republicans have not done this work because they care about people. They've done this work to keep themselves and a select few privileged and in power. And so we've got to, I learned about power in terms of, my studies in political science and history. I read The Art of War. If you haven't read it, I would encourage people to read it, because we've got to understand how this power is at play. And the other side, and the conservative side, is very clear about they want to use power to control people. And we've got to do a better job of connecting people to power so that we move forward on meaningful work and policies that we care about. All the things you just said, unions, wages. We hadn't even talked about that, right? That, people are doing this 10-year challenge. Let's talk about the 10-year challenge that from 2012, the minimum wage was $7.25, and 10 years later, it's still $7.25. Let's do that challenge. We're going to, talk about these sorts of things. And so I think that that's a piece. That's number one. Number two, I think the piece that, is fundamentally important is look at, and I'll use trades, for example, when you said that they would give you an associate degree. They'll give you a free associate degree in plumbing and then make you work that hourly wage job for the rest of your life, where you don't build wealth. And what they've done is they use low wages, they use lack of access to higher education to keep communities of people from acquiring the power and the wealth that they have not, most of them have not earned. It has been passed on. And so, at the end of the day, I think that that's where it is. And so what they're doing and what we are fighting against is generational curses. We're fighting against generational policies. The things that are happening right now, when we look at these laws that are happening across the country, the anti-union laws, the anti-voter laws, the anti-healthcare laws that are happening, if we don't make change in the next few years, we're going to see this show up in our community for the next 40, 50, 60 years. And that is how dangerous this is. And so we've got to understand what power means and how to navigate power and how to teach people about power so that we can get people in the positions that they need to be in to be able to move meaningful things forward. If we want free college, at whatever level, then how are we connecting the right people to power so that we get that thing at the end of the day? And so I think that, those are some of the things that, we've got to be considering. And I think those are some of the things we've got to be thinking about.
Brandon?
Yeah. Ditto, Jamarr, that should be chapter 4 of the book. What you just talked about. We got The Art of War. We need the book, The Art of Power. And you are the strategic mind to be able to put that book together. So it was said on here first, y'all. Got it?
And it's recorded too, so you can come back and look at the notes.
So we were talking about education, right? And education and the attack on public education is something that has not been a secret agenda of the GOP and the far right radical Republicans agenda. Here in South Carolina, I just want to put folks on notice about what's happening right now. So here we've already seen more than $100 million of tax abatements, stripping money away from our school districts, right? Mm-hmm. So giving away the dollars that would have gone in to improve our schools and to make sure that our teachers aren't coming out of pocket for school supplies and tissue, pencils, paper, working overtime with no additional pay, right? We have overcrowded classrooms because our teachers are leaving this state to go work in better conditions where they have better support and they get paid more. So they've already put the money that was supposed to go into the schools into these private corporations in the form of tax abatements. Now we have this bill, SB 935. And here's where everyone's alarm should be going off. Because when we talk about messaging, we had this conversation about messaging on our last month, and now we're talking about power. There is power in messaging, and the message will show you their game plan. When folks try to figure out what the hell are the Democrats standing for, they're asking that question because our messaging is all over the place. What do we stand for as Democrats? We have to define that for ourselves. But this SB 935 bill that's in the Senate right now. It'll be coming over to the House soon into committee. They're labeling this. The primary name of this bill is the Education Scholarship Account bill, right? That sounds great. Education scholarship accounts sound perfect, right? But then the secondary name for it is Put Parents in Charge Act. Now, where did we hear that language? We heard it in Virginia. It worked there. That's how Virginia got this Republican governor, by this Put Parents in Charge moniker. So what this bill does, this is all it is education vouchers, another way to strip money away from our private schools, our public schools, and put them into private schools. Now, this is where we're going to confuse the folks with facts in this, right? Because the students that are eligible for this education scholarship account are the students that are 200% under the poverty line. So what does this mean? Two things in my view. Those children that are going to these schools in communities that are already underserved, if they move and go to a private school, is going to further diminish and defund that public school that they were in, which is going to make that school even worse. And then we're going to see it shut down. This is going for schools like Burke High School. It's going to go for schools like North Charleston High School, like where I went to school, your school, Jamarr, North Aiken Elementary School, where I went to school. That these schools that serve, low-income communities will further be hit by this. So we can't be confused with the language. We have to educate folks, like Pastor Dixon said, about looking at this legislation, knowing what it really is. But most importantly, as a party, we have to get our act together, get our messaging in order so that we can drive our folks in the right direction. Because when they hear about SB 935, the first thing they're going to hear is education scholarship accounts, and that a little Deshaun is going to be able to get it and go to this good private school and not really understand the far-reaching effects and negative impacts of this act for our community.
Brandon, I'm glad you brought that up. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to get the page up for that bill. But Pastor Dixon, your thoughts regarding that bill, because that's antithesis to what Martin Luther King was pushing for our community and for the community at large. And suffice it to say, Martin Luther King was killed, not just civil rights. He was killed because of the Poor People's Campaign. When he started talking about education, when he started talking economics, he had crossed the line that it was just unacceptable anymore. So your thoughts, Pastor Dixon?
Yeah, and the whole thing has not changed. It has not changed. The way that our opposition, the Republican, the elitists, let me just put it that way, because a lot of this is just classism. Even though those that look like us that just happen to cross over into that class don't realize that they still are part of the underclass. But this educational thing, we don't realize, we fail to realize what is really happening to our children. Our children are being set up for failure. We talk about, free college and, tuition and all of that, but our children are graduating grade school reading on third grade reading level. Many of them that get to eighth grade realize that they're not going to be able to go to college, but you're setting the standard for success as college. We tell them, well, when you get to college, and little Johnny's sitting there saying, man, I can't even read. I ain't going to college. And then, but we've allowed them to take out other avenues where they can move into six-figure jobs, such as trades. We've allowed them to take them from our schools. We raised no cane about that. We're not pushing our elected officials to get these things put back in, things that benefited Black and brown children and poor children in the past, in order to have that pathway to the American dream. Those things have been stripped away, and they've been stripped away intentionally so that we will continually have a working class, slave class, if you want to call it that, of people. The establishment, they know that they can do this. They can get away with it. These whole schemes that they have about how to usurp the public school system, or to take away from the public school system in order to keep our children uneducated, in order to set them up for that failure and to be part of that working class, to never be able to see generational wealth. I don't even understand how we can even talk about generational wealth, because they already got 400 years on us. Their generational wealth is actually our wealth.
Mm-hmm.
They stole it from us, every aspect of it. So, we have to begin somewhere. But until we take the blinders off of our eyes and look at the system the way it really is, the trickery, the chicanery, the politics, not only just with the Republicans, but those who look like us, who aren't Republicans, but get in the office and don't do what we need done for us. We got to stop disillusioning ourselves, step out, come strong, and just change this thing around, because we're setting up our children for failure. This act is just another manifestation of the same programs that have been put in place for a long time. Then they start these privatization schemes, and they go out and they go find a group of black folks and give them a little money to stand on the corner with their little signs and carrying on, and because they black, we got a bad habit of, because they black, it must be all right. It must be all right. But they don't realize they're playing into the same system, and eventually their children are going to suffer. And once their usefulness is done, they're going to put them off the plantation.
And aren't we tired of that? I know, y'all, I'm tired. And this goes back to what Brandon was saying earlier. We got to step up, folks. And I know it's hard. There's 4 people in this show right now know it's hard. We get tired, y'all, stepping up. So we need more people to step up. Before the show started, Pastor Dixon and I were talking. I said, we got a lot of leaders. We need more foot soldiers, because foot soldiers lead to leadership. Y'all, we were all foot soldiers at one point. Now we're leaders now. Let's just claim that. We have claimed the mantle of community leader, but we had to work as foot soldiers first to get into this fight. Jamarr, I know you saw that quote, their generational wealth is our wealth. Go ahead.
Tell me where I send my love offering, because I'm telling you, that is a word, but because I think that's absolutely right. But I think to your point about leadership, because I think I was trying to look at some of the comments while we've been on here, and we talk about this training the next generation, and I think and you were saying foot soldiers, and we need to step up. I think one, we have to step up in a new way. We have to do things differently. Right. And we talked about that in some of the show about being more proactive and those sorts of things. I'm not going to rehash that. But I also think the other part, too, is, to your point, Marilyn, where you said, we were foot soldiers and, we've organized and worked and advocated and all those things. And, now many of us have taken leadership in different roles, right? Whether it's in the church or, with what Brandon's doing, like in the party, and, what I do in the party, and what you're doing with, more economics and business. I think the other piece, too, that we're missing is, part of why we don't have a lot of new foot soldiers is not because people don't want to step up. It's because people have not been given the avenue or the training or the mentorship or the support. So we have to continually cultivate foot soldiers, right? So as people come up into, community leaders role, who are you training behind you? And when are you going to move out of the way? And sometimes you have to know to make a decision to bring new people in and also to move aside when those people have matriculated. And so I think that one of the things, and I think the best way to talk about it is, when we talk about public office, right? When you talk about many of our, because we black, so when we talk about our black elected officials, how many of them probably have somebody who's lined up, or 2 to 5 people that are lined up to succeed them? Who are you teaching about the legislative process so that when there's a new legislator, the work can continue? Maybe it's a new face, but the work, continues. And so those are the things that we're not talking about. So yes, I agree with you, Marilyn. We need more foot soldiers, but the people who are in leadership are not training people to be the foot soldiers. There will be none. And so that's what I've got to do. And then when the foot soldiers get trained, don't stand in their way.
Brandon has a thought on that. I'm with you on that, Jamarr. Brandon has.
Okay, I'm not gonna go on too much, but I just wanted to make those points.
I've been blessed and privileged with the opportunity to come across some great folks who were willing to mentor me. I remember my first time meeting Pastor Dixon. We were at a Trayvon Martin rally in Marion Square in Charleston. He was speaking on putting the unity back into community, and it reshaped my thought around the whole concept. And after that, it was like we knew each other forever. That's my big brother, my uncle right there. And he's sold into me along the way. Other folks, Abe Jenkins, who we are praying for right now, is, the person, him and Robert Flood brought me into politics and got me started. And even Jamarr Brown, he pushed me along, and I used to have 2-3 hour long conversations with him almost every day, just trying to learn from him. Also plenty of stuff. And the last one is Robert Ford has taught me a lot over the years. But the one thing that all of these mentors of mine have in common, I just mentioned all men, but they were willing to prop me up, to put me in a position to learn, and then step back and step out of the way, right? And I don't see that as often. When I decided to run for the chair of the Black Caucus, there's a point when I mentioned leadership is not about how far we take the torch only. It's about when we pass the torch along. And we can't allow folks to die with the torch in their hand, and then we got to relight it and start the race all over again. We just can't do that. And looking at the state legislature here in South Carolina, we only have 43 members, Democrats, in the House. I forgot what the number is. I think it's 16 in the Senate. You put all that together, we only have 16 plus 4. That's 59 Democratic members of the state house in South Carolina. The Republicans are 1 or 2 seats away from having a supermajority in both chambers. That means if all the Democrats walked out, they could still conduct the business of the state without the Democrats being present. So why am I going in that route? I'm going in that route because we had folks that understood a succession plan was important. We had folks there that understood that you had to train up the ones that will replace you. But unfortunately, they were in the minority. Mm-hmm. And now when folks are saying, oh, shoot, there's only 59 of us, we got to do something, it is almost too late. Mm-hmm. So now we got to take 2 steps back to take 1 step forward. And we can't find ourselves here over and over and over again. So I'm calling on all of the folks who have saw a problem, see that their representative at whatever level is not doing the job. I'm calling on you to run for office. I'm asking you to be the solution to the problems that you see. I'm giving you permission to not wait for their permission, but to ask them for forgiveness later, because we can't wait another cycle. We can't let this keep going. I got a lot of flack for running for chair of the caucus, but they're going to be all right. We're going to get this work done, and we're going to keep moving and go to the next level. And I need y'all to have that same spirit, because that's the only way we're going to keep this train moving forward. Marilyn.
I didn't know you got flack when you ran, but I should have known it. I knew it, but didn't know it. But I just want you to know, I know some people. I know
you do.
You ain't even got to be associated. But anyway.
Next time you just need to call us.
Look, we got to pass
the inside out. So
we got to pass on his. I take that back, y'all. Pastor Dixon.
Hey, yeah. Yeah.
What you got to add to that?
Everything Brandon just said, especially that part. I'm just going to add to it. When you decide whomever you may be to run for office, don't go looking for them old heads, those folks that's been in their seats and carrying on. You don't need to kiss the ring. You don't need to beg for nobody's approval. What you need to do is know what the people in the community need, decide how you can make that happen for them, and run for office. Because we've had too many in our community that have held us back from success. Across our state, it's been the same thing. When I ran for U.S. Senate in 2016, I'm going to go there right quick. When I ran for U.S. Senate in 2016, a senior official in our state said that there was nobody viable running for Congress, even though I was the only Democratic candidate running against the Republican U.S. Senator. Now, how do you take a Democrat that says there's nobody qualified for that position, and the only other person is a person that stands against everything that we stand for and for everything we stand against? What the heck is, I don't get it. So it's time to move forward. That attitude has been killing us. The politics, the attitude of politics has been killing us. Because I'm in office, I deserve the best seat or to sit at the front. And when I show up, I'm acknowledged and I get to say this word, and I'm all that. And the reality is, if being all that does not reflect in the community where people's lives are being changed, where schools are improving, public schools are improving, where people can get sick and go to the hospital they work at instead of working at a hospital they can't even go to. If our elected officials are only in name only, then they need to be in the unemployment line only and get out of the way and let some younger voices in. Brandon talked about leadership. Real leaders don't create followers. They create more leaders. Mm-hmm. Because we know that there's an end date. There's an expiration date on the position any one of us holds in the community. And for me, I want to make sure that when that time comes, when I say, okay, I can't do this anymore, which I don't know, I'd probably be carrying me around somewhere there, and somebody push me over there and prop me up on a tree or something. But when that time comes, I need to know that I've had those conversations and encouraged and supported those that will take over behind me, who will be the ones that will look out for another generation of leaders coming up, to know that my grandchildren and their grandchildren are going to be in good and capable hands, and not in the hands of somebody that's just occupying a seat because it has a title in front of it, representative or senator or mayor or councilman. No, we don't need those kind of, we've seen our communities implode upon themselves for decades now because of that kind of politics. And now is the time for that change. I'm looking at that change right here on this panel, and I know, I'm confident that that change is coming, because there's a new breed coming up, not of politicians, but of public servants who are going to take this fight for the people and win this fight for the people.
Talking about knowledge and Martin Luther King, many of us have forgotten or have never known that when Martin Luther King was assassinated, when he was murdered, he was not the most popular man in the United States. 13% of Black churches, only 13% of Black churches supported him. The majority of Black churches wanted him just to be quiet, just wait, and it'll change. And as you said earlier, Pastor Dixon, before we got on, power has never given up power willingly. You got to go take it. And it's scary. So not only do people who want to suppress and oppress us operate from fear, we operate from fear also. by not doing, by listening to the old heads and say, oh, just give me one more term. I just want one more term. Then we sit and let them do it. And we know that's not right, because that's not their seat. It's the people's seat. It's fear. They know that they could tap into that fear of you thinking I'm going to fail if I run, or I might lose my job if I run, or I might get hurt if I run. That's fear. So even on our side of history, we've got to overcome that fear. And you overcome that fear through knowledge, but more importantly, you overcome that fear by doing. If you don't do, all you're doing is manifesting that fear into more than what it is. And everybody sitting here today on this show, I know at some point we have felt some fear. But we just simply said what we want to accomplish for our community is more important than the fear we feel. And that's it, y'all. And I'm trying, like, we've been talking about make it plain all day. We got to make it plain, folks. It ain't easy out here, but we need you. Because the more foot soldiers we have, the easier it will get. That's what they fear, is all of us communicating and having unity and taking this to where it needs to be, to the ideal that they wrote on paper in the Constitution and Declaration of Independence. Black folks have always done that in these United States. So y'all need to get on the board, get on the train. There's a song. I can't remember, but but Pastor Dixon and I know that song. That's our generation. These young folks on here, Jamarr and Brandon may not, but y'all need to get on that freedom train. But anyway, y'all, we wrap it up here, and it's our hour. I'm so happy that we all here. I'm gonna let everybody say some final words. I'm gonna start with Brandon, and then I want us to acknowledge, before we start, Brandon, two people who are going through something. We've mentioned Abe Jenkins already. I want y'all to hold him in prayer. Abe is dear to all of us here on this show, very dear to us. The last show that we were all together in person in December, Abe came out. He was one of the folks on the show, and he does that. He shows up in support for all of us here on this show. So hold him up in prayer, y'all. He is battling COVID. And we also want to hold up in prayer Sister Erica Coakley, Charleston School Board member, community advocate, who lost her son yesterday to his battle with COVID. And we want to hold both of them up in prayer, that one seeks healing and the other, in the moment of grief, that the Lord gives them peace, comfort in their moment of mourning. Brandon, if you could just share some final words with us, and then we'll go to Pastor Dixon and Jamarr. Brandon.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I was going to mention them in my closing remarks as well. Everyone, just keep them and their families lifted up in prayer, because prayer is the greatest weapon or tool that we have in the spiritual walk that we're in, and is the thing that we can do most to help soothe the grieving heart, is to pray and love on them. I'm sorry, y'all. Y'all got it. I love you.
We got it. Pastor Dixon.
Yeah, it's a trying time, definitely a trying time. So yes, we must continue to lift each other up, and our community up in prayer, our nation up in prayer. But first off, thank you all so much for having me today. This has been thoroughly enjoyable. It's very seldom that I get a chance to just pop off. But in closing, I really want to share the words of the honorable elder statesman Frederick Douglass. When we talk about the condition that we're in and how we can move forward, he made it plain. He made it make sense in 1857. He wrote these words. He said, "Power concedes nothing without demand. It never did, and it never will." He said, "If you find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice or wrong which will be imposed upon them." Okay, find out exactly what people will quietly submit to, and you found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which can be imposed upon them. And these will continue until they are resisted with either words or blows or with both. Frederick Douglass said, the limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. The condition that we're in right now is because we've allowed that oppression. We have not fought back with words, forgive me, with blows or with it. We just took it. We just bent over and took it. And it's time for us to stop taking, y'all forgive me. I prayed before I said that. It's time for us to stop taking it, because power will push as far as we will let it push. And we can't just sit back and argue and gripe and complain or get on Facebook and let things go. No, we need to take control of this situation. And the way we do it, we take it over politically. And we can do that. We must do that. I thank you all again for having me today. Really appreciate it.
Oh, we appreciate you coming on. We love it. You know, the invitation is, the door is always open for you to come on back and so you can just make it plain to us. Because that's what we try to do when we get together on the third Sunday Politics Talks. Jamarr.
Yes. Oh, goodness. Well, Pastor Dixon, thank you so much for being with us. I was just reflecting, actually, while we were sitting here. I remember, I think it's almost 2 years ago we started doing the third Sunday. I think one day we were sitting in COVID and everybody was losing their minds, and we were like, let's go talk to the people. And we hopped on, and it's just become this phenomenon where people are like, okay, it's third Sunday, what y'all doing? You know, I'm very proud of us, you know, for being able to create what is, I hope, is an educational tool for people. Because one of the things that, you know, as you mentioned, Marilyn, at the top of this, you know, you mentioned we're all leaders in our own right and different things that we do. But I mean, there's a learning curve to all this. And I hope that we've been able to impart our truth, our opinions in some cases, but also our working knowledge, right, of how people get involved, whether it's in the party, whether it's local advocacy, whether it's running for office, or, you know, talking about these real structural, meaningful issues, you know, as, you know, we talked about here today. So I think that, you know, I was just sitting and talking to somebody. I was like, 2 years ago, we just hopped on and started talking. And now it's become, you know, a monthly thing. And so hopefully folks will continue. And I think we can think about, you know, different guests and things like that. But, you know, on to, you know, what we were saying, you know, as we, you know, commemorate the legacy and the continued work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is, we've got to be mindful that the work didn't end. They may have taken the messenger, but the message is still important. And the work that the messenger started and moved us forward in terms of the needle, you know, is still important. And so we've got to recognize that this is a weekend that we commemorate his legacy, and a weekend that many of us probably conduct community service. But I think beyond all of that, what happens this weekend is that this has got to be our work. That we've got to be unified, and that we have to stand as a community of people and stand together. So as you mentioned, Sister Erica and Brother Abe, you know, that we're continuing to pray for them. But that's what this is about at the end of the day. It's about community. It's about building generational wealth. It's about building power together. And no one can do it by themselves. There's no way that someone can uphold their community. There's no way that someone can uphold democracy. And so, you know, as the Bible teaches us, that when 2 or 3 are gathered, that he would be here. And so we've got to make sure that, you know, we're continuing to stay together and stay unified, but also know that we have to be in this work and committed to this work for a very long time. And I'm going to say this because we got a month before the next one. And I got to say it now. You know, Black History starts in a couple of weeks. Black History Month starts in a couple of weeks. I'm proud to be Black 365 days a year. And we've got to make sure that we continue to carry that. You know, we're going to celebrate everything we need to celebrate, and that's fine. But we've got to also make sure that we understand that we've got to carry this work forward every single day. And so I encourage people to get involved, whatever that looks like for you. That might be running for office. That might get involved in the party. That might be working for a nonprofit. You know, that might be marching. Whatever it is, do something. And then encourage someone else to do something with you. And so I hope that, as we close this program, that people remember that, faith without works is dead. And so, at the end of the day, we've got to make sure that we are connected, but that we are also working in together in unison. So,
I don't have any more to say than these wonderful young men have said already this evening. I do want to say that I always appreciate you guys joining me. We do get together on third Sunday, Politics Talk, and we talk. Y'all, this is the time that Brandon and Jamarr and I actually, in our busy lives, get together and talk. And we do talk to each other every once in a while on the phone and all, but we really just come and we talk. And this is our conversation to kind of catch up with each other, see what we're doing. We're always delighted to have a special guest on like Pastor Dixon. You know that invitation is always open, Pastor Dixon, for you to join us. I mean, this really has been very moving today, very informative. And y'all, some of y'all posted about where do we start. You start with a gathering place, third Sunday Politics Talk, because we give you knowledge. We really do. It's years. We've been at this for years, and some more than others. And we have something to share. You go to Spotlight with the Georgetown NAACP every Saturday at 11 a.m. and you start learning. And then you find out what training is happening in the community, whether it's political training or community advocacy training, because that's a different type of training. There's training on how to be a candidate. Just ask those questions so you can know where to go to get that training. I was fortunate and blessed to have a mother who told me never stop learning. Even after college, she told me go to community classes, workshops, seminars, they call them webinars now, and always learn. And that has made me a stronger and better person. And I know that I sit here today with these folks, and I sit here every third Sunday with these folks that you see here, and I learn from them. And I hope that they learn from me, because that's part of our journeys to impact, as Jamarr said, our communities. I am one person I do not believe in unity for unity's sake. I believe in unity because we're putting the work in. Go ahead, Brandon.
No, that's just my new I can't come off mute for my tagline, but that is my my gesture now, because that was a point. That was a point. No, you said it all, and I appreciate you. And I left you off my list of mentors, Marilyn. I
noticed that all male list. I didn't say nothing, but
you have been a constant and present figure, especially in my political life, and helping guide, keep, and protect me along the way. So I really appreciate that. And the words that you give and creating this platform is doing the same thing for other young folks who are coming up, trying to figure out how to be the greatest service to their community. This platform, not just third Sunday, but almost every single day of the week, you are providing a platform for education, inspiration, and motivation for folks. And I just want to thank you for that. You have the link up here. This month, the Black Caucus, we're having our first action meeting of the year. I encourage folks to come join us for that action meeting. We will be electing officers for our Black Caucus, because it's time to get to work. Last year, we put together the foundation for this caucus. We put together our 5-year strategic plan for this caucus. We passed our bylaws. We got our working committees in place. So now it's time to execute. 2022 is about execution for us. And if you are willing to roll up your sleeves, put your boots on, and get to work, you want to join us for this first action meeting and stick with us and come with your ideas. Even though we're looking for foot soldiers, like we said earlier, foot soldiers also have a mind of their own and have a voice and have ideas and have a specific ear to the ground that the leaders and the organizations need to know. And I ask you to come with all of that and let's get to work together. Thank you for this, Marilyn, and thank you all, brothers Jamarr and Pastor Dixon, for your wisdom as well.
Thank you, everybody. I just want to thank also my high school classmate Kent Williams. He's tuning in from London, England, y'all. We done made it to England.
Oh, wait a minute. We're international now.
Yeah, we're international now. We global. But we usually do have national viewers and everything. We want to, of course, thank our viewers for joining us today. And I stole something from you, Brandon, on Facebook. Delegate to elevate. I'm using that for the Gullah Geechee Chamber because growth was my word, but delegate to elevate is also, I'm using that. So thank you very much. Y'all, it's been wonderful, Pastor Dixon. It's been wonderful, Jamarr Brown and Brandon, as usual. I know I'm going to see y'all next month, and we're going to talk before then because there's a lot going on. But thank you for joining me today on A Gathering Place, Third Sunday Politics Talks, and our viewing audience. Y'all join us next time. And if you want to drop a word to us, go ahead and drop it in the comments and we'll get back with you also. And of course, that link that Brandon put on, let me put that up again, SCDP Action Meeting. Y'all go ahead and click that link and go ahead and get registered there. And yes, Ebony Hughes, it was a great show. Thank you all. Pastor Dixon, you're welcome back anytime. And I know everybody, Martin Luther King Jr., day of service tomorrow. But let's think of the radical king rather than the one-dimensional king that they like us to think about. Y'all, He was radical. He was radical. Yeah, we need to remember that. All right, y'all, good to see you. Enjoyed it. And I will see you next time.
Thank you.
Well, everybody, it's A Gathering Place. Thank you, Pastor Dixon, for joining us. And thank y'all for joining us on A Gathering Place today, every Wednesday and Sunday at 4 p.m. If you are interested in being an advertiser, sponsor of A Gathering Place, just contact us. Drop me a line on our Facebook page, and I'm happy to get with you. As always, we enjoy being with you every Sunday and Wednesday at 4 o'clock. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. And be safe out there. It's snowing in South Carolina. Y'all be safe out there.